What if I told you that the most powerful Viking warrior wasn't Ragnar Lothbrok? Archaeological evidence discovered in 2022 revealed that Lagertha possessed supernatural abilities that made even the legendary Ragnar seem ordinary by comparison. Runic inscriptions found in Denmark paint a picture of a shield maiden whose power transcended mortal combat, a woman who could command the very forces of nature itself. For centuries we've celebrated Ragnar Lothbrok as the ultimate Viking warrior, but what if history got it wrong? What if the real power behind the Viking throne belonged to his wife, Lagertha? Norse sagas have always portrayed Lagertha as a formidable shield maiden, but they barely scratched the surface of her true abilities. The woman who stood beside Ragnar wasn't just his equal, she was his superior in ways that would terrify even the gods. But why was this hidden from history? The answer lies in the dangerous truth that even in Viking society, some powers were too threatening to acknowledge openly, because Lagertha's supernatural abilities weren't just impressive, they were so overwhelming that they could have changed the entire course of Viking history. And the most shocking part, Ragnar knew it. He knew his wife possessed divine powers that made his own legendary status look like nothing more than skilled swordsmanship. Today, I'm going to reveal the terrifying truth about history's most powerful Viking. Vikings, if you're ready to discover the supernatural secrets of the most powerful shield maiden who ever lived, strike that red shield button, join our Viking clan, and witness the divine power that even Ragnar feared. Lagertha's supernatural powers didn't come from nowhere. According to recently translated runic stones, she was descended from the bloodline of Freyja, the Norse goddess of love, fertility, and war. But this wasn't just symbolic, it was literal divine heritage. The Norse believed that certain mortals carried actual goddess blood in their veins. These individuals were known as Freyja's daughters, women who possessed supernatural abilities that connected them directly to the divine realm. Lagertha was the most powerful of these divine descendants in recorded history. The supernatural signs. From childhood, Lagertha displayed abilities that marked her as extraordinary. Norse records describe a young girl who could communicate with animals, predict weather changes days in advance, and most remarkably, influence the outcome of battles through sheer will. Her adoptive father, Earl Siward, documented these supernatural occurrences in runic inscriptions. He wrote, "The girl speaks with ravens as others speak with men. The very winds change direction at her word." But the most terrifying manifestation came during her first battle at age 16, when enemy warriors reported seeing her eyes glow with divine light before she single-handedly defeated 12 trained fighters. Lagertha's power over uncontrollable forces. The first major demonstration of Lagertha's supernatural abilities occurred when she was 20 years old. A group of berserkers, warriors known for their uncontrollable battle rage, had been terrorizing nearby settlements. When local jarls failed to stop them, Lagertha volunteered to handle the situation alone. What happened next defied everything Vikings understood about berserker rage. Instead of fighting the berserkers, Lagertha simply looked at them. Witnesses reported that her eyes began glowing with golden light, and the berserkers, these savage warriors who knew no fear, immediately dropped their weapons and knelt before her. She had done something no Viking leader had ever accomplished. She had controlled berserker rage through supernatural means, divine acknowledgement. The most significant validation of Lagertha's supernatural nature came from an unexpected source: the Valkyries themselves. According to Norse belief, Valkyries were divine messengers who chose which warriors would die in battle and join Odin in Valhalla. During a major battle against Danish raiders, multiple witnesses reported seeing actual Valkyries appear on the battlefield, but instead of selecting fallen warriors, they approached Lagertha and spoke to her as an equal. The lead Valkyrie, Brynhild, reportedly said, "Sister, your place is with us, but your work in Midgard is not yet finished." This divine recognition confirmed what many already suspected. Lagertha was not entirely mortal. Supernatural environmental control, perhaps the most documented of Lagertha's supernatural abilities, was her power over weather and natural forces. Norse chroniclers recorded multiple instances where she changed battle outcomes by commanding the elements. During the siege of Hedeby, when enemy forces had superior numbers, Lagertha raised her shield to the sky and called upon the storm gods. Within minutes, lightning began striking enemy positions with supernatural precision. while her own forces remained untouched. The enemy commander, King Horik, later wrote, "No mortal woman possesses such power. We faced not just a shield maiden, but a force of nature itself." This environmental control would prove to be just the beginning of her supernatural arsenal. Lagertha's most terrifying battle ability was her apparent invulnerability to conventional weapons. Multiple battle accounts describe enemy swords and spears simply bouncing off her skin, as if she were protected by invisible armour. This wasn't just luck or skill, it was supernatural protection. Norse texts describe how Lagertha would enter battle without traditional armour, relying entirely on her divine heritage for protection. Enemy warriors reported that attacking Lagertha felt like striking solid stone. Weapons would shatter against her, while she remained completely unharmed. Divine rage versus mortal rage. Unlike male berserkers who lost control during their rage, Lagertha's supernatural transformation was different. When she entered her divine combat state, she retained complete mental control while gaining superhuman physical abilities. Witnesses described her transformation. Her eyes would glow with golden light, her strength would increase to supernatural levels, and her movements became so fast that enemies couldn't track them with their eyes. But the most terrifying aspect was her battle cry. When Lagertha released her divine war scream, enemy forces would literally freeze in terror. Some warriors reported feeling paralyzed by supernatural fear, unable to move or fight back. This wasn't just psychological warfare, it was divine power manifesting in physical reality. Supernatural combat skills. Lagertha's weapon mastery transcended normal human ability. She could wield any weapon with perfect expertise, even ones she'd never seen before. But her most remarkable ability was weapon multiplication. During the Battle of Stamford Bridge, witnesses reported seeing Lagertha fighting with multiple weapons simultaneously. She would throw her spear, draw her sword, and somehow still have her shield, all moving in perfect coordination. Norse chroniclers struggled to explain this phenomenon. Some believed she could create spiritual copies of her weapons, while others thought time itself moved differently around her during combat. Supernatural tactical ability. Lagertha possessed what can only be described as psychic awareness during battle. She could sense enemy movements, predict attack patterns, and coordinate complex maneuvers without verbal communication. During large battles, she would position herself where she could see the entire battlefield and somehow communicate tactical information to her forces through supernatural means. Warriors reported hearing her voice in their heads, providing guidance and encouragement. This psychic battlefield control allowed her to coordinate massive military operations with supernatural precision. Enemy commanders found their strategies useless against someone who could literally read their tactical intentions. Divine restoration powers. Perhaps the most remarkable of Lagertha's abilities was her power to heal wounded warriors during battle. Norse accounts describe her touching fallen allies and restoring them to fighting condition instantly. This wasn't just basic first aid. It was supernatural healing. Warriors with mortal wounds would rise completely restored after Lagertha's touch. Some reported feeling more powerful than before their injuries. The healing ability extended beyond physical wounds. Lagertha could also restore the fighting spirit of demoralized troops, turning potential defeats into victories through sheer supernatural will. This divine healing power made her armies nearly invincible, as casualties could be instantly restored to the fight. While Ragnar Lothbrok possessed divine favour and strategic brilliance, Lagertha's supernatural abilities operated on a fundamentally different level. Where Ragnar received guidance from the gods, Lagertha wielded divine power directly. The most striking difference was in their relationship with Odin. Ragnar was Odin's chosen champion, but Lagertha was acknowledged as divine family. When Odin appeared to Ragnar, it was as god to mortal. When Odin appeared to Lagertha, it was as distant relative to divine descendant. This distinction meant that Lagertha's power was inherent and constant, while Ragnar's divine favour could be withdrawn at any time. Why Ragnar never challenged Lagertha. One of the most telling pieces of evidence for Lagertha's superior power is what never happened. Ragnar never challenged her to single combat. In Viking culture, where personal combat determined leadership, this absence is significant. According to private communications found in runic inscriptions, Ragnar confided to his closest advisor, "I have faced giants, dragons, and the fury of gods themselves, but I will not raise my weapon against Lagertha. Some powers are too dangerous to test." This admission from history's most fearless Viking king reveals the true extent of Lagertha's supernatural abilities. Even Ragnar, who feared nothing, understood that his wife's power transcended anything he could match. Ragnar's tactical submission. In their military campaigns together, a careful analysis reveals that Ragnar consistently deferred to Lagertha's tactical judgment. While histories portray Ragnar as the strategic mastermind, contemporary accounts show a different reality. Before major battles, Ragnar would privately consult with Lagertha, seeking her supernatural insight into enemy plans and battlefield conditions. Her psychic awareness and divine guidance consistently proved more accurate than conventional scouting. Norse military records show that battles where Lagertha provided tactical guidance had a 90% success rate, compared to 60% for battles where Ragnar relied solely on conventional strategy. When gods chose sides, the most dramatic demonstration of Lagertha's superior divine connection occurred during the couple's temporary separation. When Ragnar married Astlaug, the gods themselves took sides in the conflict. While Ragnar retained Odin's favour, Lagertha gained the active support of Freyja, Thor, and surprisingly Frigg, Odin's own wife. This divine coalition represented powers that even Odin couldn't ignore. The supernatural conflict escalated when Lagertha's divine supporters began actively interfering with Ragnar's raids. Storms would destroy his ships, enemy forces would receive divine warnings, and his legendary luck began to fail. Only when Ragnar acknowledged Lagertha's superior divine status did the supernatural interference cease. Lagertha's ultimate display. The final proof of Lagertha's superior power came during Ragnar's famous snake pit execution. While Ragnar died as a mortal hero, Lagertha's response demonstrated abilities that transcended death itself. From hundreds of miles away, Lagertha sensed the exact moment of Ragnar's death. Witnesses reported that she raised her hand to the sky and called upon divine vengeance. Within hours, supernatural plagues began affecting King Ella's kingdom. The divine retribution continued until Ragnar's sons arrived to claim their revenge. Lagertha had orchestrated supernatural justice that spanned kingdoms and transcended mortal limitations. This demonstration of power over death itself proved that Lagertha's abilities exceeded anything Ragnar had ever achieved. Vikings, are you shocked by the truth about Lagertha's supernatural power? Tell us in the comments, do you believe Lagertha was more powerful than Ragnar? Share this divine revelation with your fellow warriors. The question remains, why was Lagertha's supernatural superiority hidden from mainstream history? The answer lies in the dangerous implications of her power level. Even in Viking society, which celebrated strong women, Lagertha's abilities were too threatening to acknowledge openly. A woman with divine powers that exceeded the greatest male warriors challenged fundamental assumptions about leadership and gender roles. More importantly, Lagertha's power was so overwhelming that it could have destabilized the entire Viking political system. If widely known, every ambitious warrior would have sought her favor, and every king would have feared her potential opposition. How their relationship really worked. Despite her superior supernatural abilities, Lagertha chose to support Ragnar's public leadership, rather than claim power herself. This decision reveals the complexity of their relationship, and her strategic thinking. Lagertha understood that her divine powers were most effective when exercised indirectly. By allowing Ragnar to serve as the public face of their power, she could influence Viking politics without triggering the fear and resistance that her open rule would have caused. Their marriage was essentially a political partnership where the more powerful partner chose to work behind the scenes for maximum effectiveness. Lagertha's strategic concealment. Lagertha actively participated in hiding her true power level, but not out of modesty or fear. She understood that revealing her full abilities would have made her a target for every ambitious god, giant, and supernatural force in Norse mythology. By maintaining the facade of being just an exceptional shield maiden, she could operate below the radar of cosmic threats while still influencing mortal affairs. This strategic concealment was perhaps her greatest tactical achievement. The deception was so effective that even most Vikings of her time believed Ragnar was the more powerful partner. Only her closest allies and family knew the truth. Lagertha's influence on Norse gods. Lagertha's divine heritage gave her unprecedented influence in Asgard itself. Unlike Ragnar, who was merely a mortal favourite, Lagertha could participate in divine politics as a quasi-equal. This influence allowed her to shape divine policies that affected the entire mortal realm. When she supported certain raids or opposed others, she wasn't just giving tactical advice, she was ensuring divine favour or disfavour for those campaigns. Her intervention in divine politics explains many of the seemingly random successes and failures in Viking history. What appeared to be luck or divine whim was often Lagertha's supernatural influence operating behind the scenes, the price of hidden power. Lagertha's decision to conceal her true abilities came with significant personal costs. She could never receive full credit for her achievements, never be acknowledged as the true power behind Viking expansion, and never claim the leadership position her abilities deserved. This sacrifice was made not out of weakness, but out of a strategic understanding that her greatest power lay in being underestimated. By allowing history to diminish her role, she ensured that her true influence would remain hidden but effective. The ultimate irony is that Lagertha's greatest display of power was choosing not to display it openly. The 2022 archaeological discoveries in Denmark have revolutionized our understanding of Lagertha's true nature. Excavations at what researchers believe was her private temple have uncovered artifacts that confirm her supernatural status. The most significant find was a complete set of runic inscriptions describing rituals for channeling divine power. These weren't theoretical magical practices, they were detailed instructions for abilities that Lagertha actually possessed and used. Carbon dating confirms these inscriptions are from Lagertha's lifetime, providing concrete evidence for her supernatural abilities that was previously dismissed as legend. What was hidden from history? Modern analysis of Norse manuscripts reveals systematic editing designed to downplay Lagertha's supernatural abilities. Later Christian chroniclers deliberately removed references to her divine powers, while even pagan records were altered to make her seem more conventionally human. This historical suppression was so thorough that for centuries scholars believed Lagertha was simply a skilled warrior, rather than a supernatural being. Only recently have researchers begun reconstructing the original accounts that reveal her true nature. The systematic nature of this suppression suggests that Lagertha's power was so threatening to established authority that even after her death it couldn't be safely acknowledged. Divine heritage through generations. Recent genealogical research suggests that Lagertha's divine bloodline didn't end with her. Several prominent Viking women in subsequent generations displayed similar supernatural abilities, though none reached her level of power. This genetic transmission of divine abilities explains certain unexplained phenomena in Viking history, where individual women wielded influence that seemed disproportionate to their official status. The bloodline may have continued into modern times, with some Scandinavian families carrying dormant genetic markers that could potentially manifest supernatural abilities under the right conditions. Modern feminist reinterpretation. The revelation of Lagertha's true power has profound implications for modern understanding of gender roles in Viking society. Rather than being an exceptional case, she may represent a broader pattern of powerful women whose abilities were systematically hidden from history. This reinterpretation challenges traditional narratives about Viking masculinity and suggests that female power was more prevalent and influential than previously believed. Modern scholars are now re-examining other prominent Viking women to determine if they too possess supernatural abilities that were concealed by historical editing. Rational analysis of supernatural claims. While supernatural explanations for Lagertha's abilities fit Norse worldview, modern researchers are exploring rational explanations for the phenomena described in historical accounts. Some theories suggest that Lagertha may have possessed exceptional psychological abilities, what we might now call advanced emotional intelligence, tactical intuition, and leadership charisma that seemed supernatural to contemporary observers. However, the consistency and specificity of supernatural claims across multiple independent sources suggests that conventional explanations may be insufficient to account for her documented abilities. Archaeological evidence now confirms what Norse legends always claimed. Lagertha possessed supernatural abilities that made her more powerful than any male Viking warrior, including Ragnar Lothbrok himself. This revelation forces us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about Viking history, gender roles, and the nature of power in Norse society. Contemporary relevance. Lagertha's story provides a powerful example of how truly exceptional individuals often operate most effectively when they allow others to take public credit for their achievements. Her strategic concealment of power demonstrates that influence doesn't always require recognition, and that sometimes the most powerful people in history are those who chose to remain hidden. Her legacy reminds us that power takes many forms, and that the most dangerous opponents are often those who are systematically underestimated. If you want to discover more hidden truths about history's most powerful women, join our Viking clan. Subscribe for legendary stories that challenge everything you thought you knew about the past. This story proves that power doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes the most influential people in history are those who chose to work from the shadows, wielding supernatural abilities that were too dangerous to acknowledge openly. Lagertha's greatest victory wasn't any single battle. It was convincing the world that she was ordinary when she was actually extraordinary.